a reason waiting for this show. Okay, some of your destinations have errors. Oh my God. What does that mean?
I
Probably
don't know.
Facebook. I'm not gonna. Oh, it's saying what do you call it, people? If you are listening to this, okay, then it might only actually be on Facebook. That's okay.
You can
Okay,
always save the video and share it later.
okay. Okay, people, we are live, and you get to have the funness of seeing the technicalities. Again, for my second live show. Thank you, Mr. Nick, Warriors Next Adventure, for reminding me, which I already know I need to get a computer. Okay.
Yes, you need a computer. It'll make this so much easier.
I know. Okay, I'm so excited. I know that's why we didn't go through with our last show and why we are doing this today, because it's very important for veterans. And so before we get right in, I just wanted to say again to everybody, thank you for tuning in to Rock Your Life with Nora Finch, which I am now doing videos. I was just doing audio. And so I am a mental readiness coach, and I specialize in first responder wellness. I offer tools and tips to help them thrive in their personal and professional lives. This podcast was inspired by my 20 plus years in holistic wellness and my self-defense training in the Israeli system of Krav Maga. Okay, so why again was I disgusted this morning? Why do we have sales, a Macy's sale for Veterans Day? Like, when did that even start? Why are we having that stuff?
There's always Veterans Day sales and stuff to get veterans out shopping, and it's all a ploy to get veterans just to spend money on Veterans Day.
So you think it's for the veterans?
Well, that's what they're saying. It's a Veterans Day sale, so veterans get discounts on Veterans Day. But it's for everybody. But it's whatever.
Well, thanks for giving me that perspective, because I'm just like, what are we celebrating? It makes it seem like we're celebrating something, but I'm looking deep into it.
It's celebrating Veterans Day.
Yeah.
Giving veterans a break.
Okay. I like that. Okay. So today's show, our veterans, a soldier's journey and finding healing through emotional vulnerability and more. You're so perfect for this topic. Okay, so don't get your panties in a bunch. I'm just going to be do a little bit of talking, kind of like how I did before and I do with all my shows, okay?
It's fine. It's your podcast.
Okay, even though this might go into 2 hours. Okay, so my connection with veterans is with my two dads, meaning my biological dad and my mom's remarried husband. Okay, so my biological dad, who I grew up with, was in Vietnam. He did participate in the artillery battalion, and he never fired his rifle, but he got to participate in road bombing and rocket attacks on main USA Army encampments, and much more. He has always had a lot to say about Vietnam, because when he came back and educated himself, he learned a lot. Then my stepdad, who was a navigator in the Air Force, who's permanently living in Thailand. And after my mom's passing, he loves it over there because all he does is sit and watch ball games, and get fried rice delivered to his door for 50 cents, in his special condo for $100 a month. Who's the smart one now?
Sounds like I need to move to Thailand.
I know. Well, Muay Thai, you're going to get there one day. Okay, your other passion and love we'll talk about. I don't know if it's a passion, but you were doing it pretty hardcore. So I would say you were passionate about it.
Yeah, it was ranked number 3. I was ranked number 3 welterweight in Minnesota back in 2018.
Yeah, excuse me. I forgot to mention about Minnesota. Okay, so neither of them have very great things, I guess, to say about the military or politicians, and they're very valid reasons, which that is for another show if people want to learn about it. But older people now, they have a lot to say about war and military, different than your generation. How old are you?
You'll find a lot of veterans are pretty anti-war.
Yeah. Well, I don't think people want to go. Okay, so what I wanted to say is that I hope this episode provides a lot of healing for people. I brought my Kleenex just in case. It's nothing wrong with crying, but I just want to be able to get through a paragraph if I start. Okay, so while we could go deep, and I wanted to actually write a very special letter to veterans as first responders, apologizing in a sense for us being ignorant and feeling like maybe that they're not listened to, or, basically nobody gives a shit. But on a positive note, we all have those types of those moments, but finding self-love and a life mission help us tremendously. So when you do feel alone, right? Because we all have those moments. Blah, blah, blah. So on to Nick. Brother Nick, I am not sure that we need more stories about vets making attempts on their lives. I feel like history is going to keep repeating itself until we learn certain lessons and patterns and we start doing something different, right? Not doing the same thing and expecting a different, result.
Definition of
Okay.
insanity.
Yes, you know it. So choosing to be emotionally vulnerable. I wanted to focus on that and also just a little bit of discussion on this book, which I know you haven't read, but you said you will probably will. One of my guests, Warren the Soul. Just a couple of clips from this because I just wanted to get your, just your take on it because it is different.
Sure.
Okay. So I will get to you. I would like you to speak up about yourself, but I will say this little part in that Nick Rahn, it's like you have two first names. Ron, like R-O-N, okay, served in law enforcement and an Air Force Security Forces airman joining in 2006, who promoted to staff sergeant and was trained as a combat skilled instructor. He currently is a 911 dispatcher and president and founder of the nonprofit Warriors Next Adventure. So, will you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and then what made you decide to join the military because you wanted to be a cop first? So
Yeah,
upbringing.
sure.
Okay.
So I kind of had a rough start at life. My dad, and my mom got a divorce when I was very young. I think I was maybe like 2 or something like that. But I actually remember the night that they separated, based off of a lot of arguing and glass shattering and craziness. There was no actual physical abuse, but it was definitely wild. So they separated, which was actually very good for both of them. Living with my birth mom, I don't have a relationship with her anymore for many reasons. Um, we bounced around quite a bit. I'm pretty sure I lived in well over 15, maybe 20 houses before I was the age of 11 when I finally moved in with my dad. We had I want to say like 99, like 2000 time frame. I think I was like 11, something like that, 10 or 11. And my my birth mom was with a piece of shit, essentially. My stepdad was just a horrible person. Come to find out later on in life that they were doing meth and a bunch of other shit. So it kind of explains that. But there's one night in particular that I would say pinpoint the reason why I wanted to be a cop. It was middle of winter. We lived on a lake, and next thing you know, it was probably 9 o'clock at night or so. And my stepdad comes crawling into the house, and he's like pulling himself. I'm like, "What the fuck?" And I'm like, "What happened?" He's like, "Your mom's dead. We crashed the motorcycle or the snowmobile." I'm like, "What?" I was like, "My mom's dead," and so I ran out to go find her. And sure enough, I found her laying there, lifeless. So I went over and I sat down at her head and I picked her up and I put her head in my lap and I pulled her helmet off and I just started punching her chest. That's I was a kid. That's what I thought you're supposed to do. A modified version of CPR, I guess. And she started coughing up blood and I had blood all over my face and shit. So I actually brought her back, which was nice. I ran back into the house to get a blanket because I figured she was cold, and I went to go call the cops. And my stepdad essentially told me that if you call the cops, I'll kill you. So I pretty much told him to fuck off. I ran downstairs, grabbed the phone, called 911, ran out back to my mom, and put a blanket over her, and I pretty much just kept her warm until the cops got there. Found out shortly after she had broken every lung or every rib in her right side. She punctured her lung in a couple places. She lacerated her liver. She tore her spleen and broke her collarbone in like 4 different places. And then she also had a bunch of fractures in the back of her skull. So she had a brain injury on top of it. And she died a couple times on the operating table that night. She was in a body cast for probably 6 months or so. And I essentially had to take care of her. I missed school a lot just so I could take her to the bathroom in the morning, and I had to learn how to cook, and I make a mean beef stew. I'll tell you that much. So we go back to the night that happened. There was a police officer that actually came up to me, and he was making sure that I was okay. And, he was telling me that I was brave, and, everything that I did saved my mom's life. And so I was like, this is awesome. He was super nice to me. And I remember they let me help carry her on the stretcher because we had to walk along the ice to get up to the hill where the dock was. So they actually let me help carry my mom to the ambulance, which was pretty cool. 6 months after she was in the accident, she got her body cast off and dropped me off at my dad's house and never came back. So lifelong feelings of abandonment, followed shortly after. But luckily I figured all that shit out, so it doesn't really bother me too much anymore. But because of the way that officer treated me, it's kind of the reason why I decided I wanted to be a cop.
Mm-hmm. And then you did do that, and then you did that shortly before joining military, you mean?
No, so I wanted to be a cop so bad. I was figuring out my quickest route, and my quickest route was actually to join the Air Force, to be security forces. So security forces is, for people who don't know much about military stuff, it's essentially an MP is what you would hear. So we're law enforcement as well as security. But I was one of the lucky ones to get tasked as a 50 cal gunner and do convoys overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan. So at the age of 19, I was technically a cop. So
do you think, in terms of like, what was your impression of the military beforehand? Like, do you feel like what was your impression of it, just in general? Like, as a glorified thing, like, did you have a negative or a positive, like, outlook on it? Obviously you're choosing.
My grandpa was in the Navy. My dad was in the Marines, and also the Army Guards. So, by the way, I just want to do shout out to all the Marines out there. Happy birthday, you crayon eating motherfuckers. So it's the Marine Corps birthday today, so I figured I'd just throw a shout out.
Oh, good.
Plenty of Crayola crayons for all of you.
I have been investigating them more because I don't know much about that. So that might be in some future shows.
Yeah.
I don't know much at all about that division.
Oh, what about the Marines?
Marines.
Or about
Marines specifically. Anyway, okay.
They
so it ran in your
are
family.
the biggest group of weirdos and knuckle draggers that you want going into a village first, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be tearing stuff apart.
Okay, so tell me, in your opinion, if you were to stereotype each group of the people that join each one, can you do that? Are you scared?
Yeah, I mean, it's all jokes, like we all love each other and stuff. I got plenty of friends that are Marines. I got plenty of friends that are Army, Air Force, Navy. We're always going to mess with each other. It's just the way it works. But
is the Air Force the more? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, the thought is that the Marines are knuckle dragging goofballs who eat crayons. The Army is pretty much just a bunch of idiots. The Air Force is a bunch of yuppity, spoiled guys who stay in 5-star hotels. So guilty. And the Navy is a bunch of gay people.
That's great. I love that.
Obviously not true for people who don't understand the military humor.
I love that. No, I only thought that my stepdad said that the Air Force were like the educated ones.
Yeah, but I was Air Force Security Forces, so I was like smart enough to join the Air Force, but not smart enough to join the Air Force. So it's like the redheaded stepchildren of the military.
Okay. So based on your experience, though, through it, because we haven't talked about this before, though, I don't know to say that your experience was negative or positive. You definitely walked away with criticism of it, right? There's certain things like leadership and things like that, right? We talked about.
Well, there's most people that do. I mean, you're going to see negatives, but I mean, that was the best 6 years of my life.
Okay.
I'd go back and do it again any day.
Okay. Well, let's move on, since there are other things we can talk about, and it's good. Okay. So what I wanted to read is a little bit here from Dr. Tick's book, but I actually just even asked him yesterday to redefine this PTSD experience. So he's worked with veterans over 30 years, and he's still doing it right now. He's actually holding a mini retreat online tomorrow that I'm going to check out. So that'll be interesting. And people can find out more about him, but he was one of my guests on my shows, and it was called Healing the Nation's Veterans. So what he was saying is, okay, this is complex, right? I even have to think about this, but Okay, PTSD is not a disorder, but a transformational process into an initiated elder warrior identity. It becomes a disorder when misunderstood and misguided by society's representatives who do not understand or know how to facilitate the warrior path. Does that do you get that? Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, it
The
makes sense.
warrior. Okay, so he goes into explaining basically what he does and how he's helped veterans and healing traditions and different things like that. So, but what I wanted to say is a couple pages here. I want to start reading like bedtime stories to people. This is great. Okay. After a decade of the best psychotherapy I could offer, I went in search of more effective methods for healing our veterans. Through study, travel, interviews, and immersion in other cultures, I suggested warrior traditions worldwide and searched for holistic, experiential, and psycho-spiritual methods to use in healing vets today. These were my guiding questions. Does the wound we call PTSD result from violent combat in all times and places, or is it unique to the Vietnam War and wars since? Does it result from American ways of fighting or treating veterans? Does it result from modern technological warfare? Is it caused or exacerbated by the ways societies treat veterans upon return? Did other cultures, past and present, have effective ways of helping their wounded veterans heal and reintegrate? That's some of the stuff I've always thought about.
Well, it's
So
different
what?
generationally too, because the Vietnam veterans were definitely mistreated much worse than any other veterans. Those guys came home to people spitting on them and yelling at them, and saying that they were baby killers and all this stuff. I would say it's definitely changed. If you compare for sure, like the Vietnam era veterans, they got treated like shit.
Mhm.
Nowadays, I mean, we have all kinds of discounts, and people will say the whole "thank you for your service" and all that stuff. But it's still kind of. I mean, the whole "thank you for your service" thing is really difficult to get into because most veterans, when you say that to them, it's like, "Oh, thanks, I appreciate it." Just leave it at that. But it makes us uncomfortable, to be honest. It's nice to know you're supported and everything like that, but it's more so of oh, thank you for your service, and then they walk away like, I thank the veteran, and then they think that
Mhm.
everything's better, right? It's not. It's not what we want. It's not what we need. Veterans want jobs. We want to go to school. We want to be able to provide. We want to be a valuable member of the team again. And a lot of veterans, when you get out of the military, you tend to feel like you're exiled because when you leave the military, it's like they kick you to the curb. They want nothing to do with you, not the people, but
Right.
the military itself. So we want to be a part of a system again. And so getting out of the military, if you just constantly give veterans handouts, like homeless veterans or something like that, if you keep giving them handouts, it's not going to help them do anything. It's going
Mhm.
to help them, for a day or two, but it's the kind of whole teach a man to fish kind of method. You
Well,
can't just give handouts. You got to give them a job, give them skills.
I think culturally, again, that whole question, that statement, thank you for your service, it's the same thing with first responders. What's the worst you've ever seen? So I think that just culturally, we don't know how to act and we should be taught. I feel like it's just like a respect thing. But now that you bring it up, I did want to ask your opinion since you said those were the best years of your life, though. What do you say though about these stories? Because I had a lot of these questions. So me growing up, I don't know which way it started, actually when it started. My anger and disgust and stuff like that started at 14, but towards more so media and then government. So what do you these stories that were validated that I talked to veterans probably over the past 8 years that say how long they have to wait at the VA? I know somebody who has been stabbed in Afghanistan and has had over 20 surgeries and all his lymphatic system is all messed up. Like, what about those like stories? Do you still feel supportive of do you feel supportive, I guess, still of like, do you feel like our government takes care? Do you think our government start takes care? Is that why, or is that why you started Warriors Next Adventure?
No,
Basically,
there's a reason
tell
why I
me.
started a nonprofit to help veterans with PTSD because I feel like the government does a shit job of it.
Okay. Okay.
It's like anybody who wants to sit here and think, I'm not going to get into politics or anything, but people want government run healthcare. Go look at the VA. I applied for my VA benefits March 2019. I finally got into the VA last week.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
That's government run healthcare for you. It
Mm-hmm.
sucks. It needs to be revamped. And one of the things that a lot of people acknowledge is there's a lot of people within the VA who truly give a shit, who truly want to help you, but they're handcuffed. They're handcuffed and they can't do a lot because what the government allows them to do. I sat on hold one day with the VA for, I think it came out to be 6 hours. I had my phone
What?
sitting there because I was doing an experiment. I wanted to see how long I would
How long?
sit. It's 6 hours. It was
That is a
ridiculous.
long time.
I'm
Oh
serious.
my gosh.
But there's other times when I finally switched my provider to a different hospital, because here in Minnesota, we have the Minneapolis VA. Then we also have the St. Cloud. When I finally got a hold of somebody in St. Cloud and got to the right person, I got a phone call. I got like 12 appointments set up. So I think the biggest issue is veterans not knowing how to navigate the system, which is why I started helping veterans navigate the system, because I figured out the process finally. And so now what I do is if a veteran needs to get signed up for their VA benefits or apply for the VA healthcare system, they can call me and I can at least tell them where they need to go. I don't help them get it set up. I don't help them file their claims. I'm not qualified for that. However, I do give them the steps they need to actually go down that route. So I think the biggest issue is the confusion of what do we do? What the hell do we do when we get out? So I think there needs to be a better transitioning program. So what I'm doing is I'm actually getting involved here in Minnesota with the National Guard and the Air Guard to actually help them with people who are transitioning out of the military. So they can reach out to me and we can just chat and find out what's next, right? That's essentially what Warrior's Next Adventure is about, is what's next. What's going to be our next adventure? Whether it's finding healthcare or doing something else like a new business or, finding a new passion.
So how would they even find about, we might as well can go ahead and a little bit talk about that. So how would they find you anyway? Like initially,
a quick Google search.
Oh, but
so you're saying, so if somebody were to be getting out, somebody who is getting out of the system, I am connected with Military One Source. So Military One Source is something you can go to if you're trying to find like pretty much anything that has to do with military stuff. You can find me there. But also there's a transition program that all veterans go through. It's I can't remember what it's called. I didn't go through it because they just kind of kicked me to the curb, but there's a lot of veterans who go through this. I can't remember what the program name is, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get connected into that program. So I will be one of the people that they can reach out to. So I can help them at least start their VA claim, point them in the right direction. So I shouldn't say start it because I'm not actually physically helping them start it. I'm just helping them network. So essentially I work as a networking system, but I'll be working with the transitioning program. So hopefully I can go in and actually speak during these transition programs, and I can get like 15, 20 minutes. I can go in and actually be a guest speaker at some of these things to let these guys know. And that's just here in Minnesota. I'd like to expand and be nationwide with stuff like that. My nonprofit is nationwide, but that section of it is still very, very small because my abilities are much bigger than what my capabilities are right now.
Okay. And what did you, since I didn't describe it at all, you want to go ahead and explain it? What is Warrior's Next Adventure?
So Warrior's Next Adventure is, we're a nonprofit for veterans. Our mission statement is helping veterans overcome PTSD and suicide prevention through new adventures. So what we do is we have 5 separate programs. All of these programs, I'll get into what they are real quick. We have the WNA top 50. So we're climbing the highest mountain peaks in all 50 states, which is awesome. We've done we just did the highest mountain peak in Colorado back in June. July last year we did Mount Marcy. I had one of my ambassadors. I got a new program with the ambassadors. One of my WNA ambassadors actually led a hike up Mount Marcy again back in October. And they had 12 guys make it all the way to the top, which was pretty awesome. One of their unit members, his name was Nick Volger. He was actually supposed to climb that mountain with those guys, but he died back in April. So they actually his mom actually went and climbed with Warrior's Next Adventure, and she made the hike for her son, which is beautiful.
Oh,
Yeah, I absolutely love that.
rad story.
Yeah, she's amazing. The fact that she made it up that it's a 17-mile hike, it's ridiculous. So we've climbed that mountain, and then we've had quite a few others. We're climbing Mount Whitney next year, so that's going to be a lottery. So the way I'm going to set it up, I'm taking 10 people with me. So I'm going to have all these guys, when the time comes, they're going to start a fundraiser. If they raise $1,000, the first 8 people to raise $1,000 get to go, all expenses paid, to go climb the mountain with me. And then the 8th and the 9th, or the 9th and the 10th person, every $200 increment raised is an entry into the lottery. So the last 2 people I'm actually going to pick from the lottery. So if you raise $200, you have a chance to go on an all expenses paid mountain climbing trip with Warriors Next Adventure for 5 days, all expenses. So that's going to be a good one. So that's the WNA Top 50. We also have Operation Wolf Dog, which is we partnered up with Minnesota Wolf Dogs up here in Minnesota. They're all hybrid wolves. They're mixed with like Shepherd and Malamute. So what we do is we go up there and we actually build enclosures for them. So we build cages. I think we've installed about 250 feet of fencing. We've built a couple dog houses, and we actually get to go in the pens and play with these animals, which is amazing. Seeing a veteran, kind of react the first time they're actually going face to face with a giant wolf is pretty sweet. Diesel is the alpha out there. When Diesel stands up, I'm 6'2". So when Diesel stands up, his head is higher than mine. He's a big animal. He's a big animal. So that's usually the cage that I take veterans into first, because it's the most intimidating. He'll run around you.
I'm sorry, excuse me. What's it called? Operation Wolf Dog?
Yeah, so yeah, because they're wolf dogs.
Yeah, but I mean the place, like if we put it in.
No, Operation Wolf Dog is the name of the program. Minnesota Wolf Dogs is the program. There is the sanctuary. So that's been an amazing program. I've had so much support for that. That's probably my favorite program. Recently bought a race car, so now I'm a race car driver. So what I do is I take veterans to the races with me. I take 2 veterans every race to go sit in the pits with me, so they get to help me work on the race car. So if something breaks, if they don't know anything about mechanics, they can just hand me tools. If they are a mechanic, then they can help me. But also we keep the race car here in my garage, so we actually can work on the race car anytime. So I had a bunch of veterans help me put the stickers on, and it's been a lot of fun. And then go ahead.
I was going to say, I really love the integration of the animal, parts of healing, that whole aspect of that. So I wish there was something, maybe there's something like that in California, Northern, but I don't know.
Yeah, there is. It's called, what the hell is it called? It's the same concept, but those are actual wolves. There's a couple series, there's a couple videos on YouTube about them. I'll find it and I'll send it to you. I can't remember what they're called. But then we also have a program called WNA BJJ. We get veterans training Jiu Jitsu. We actually tomorrow, for Veterans Day at 7:00 at Trax BJJ in Coon Rapids, Minnesota, we actually have an open mat for Veterans Day. So we're supposed to have quite a few veterans come out there, hopefully. COVID is kind of slowing things down. And then we also have the podcast, which is actually something that's been a lot of fun. That's just on YouTube and Facebook. And then we also do community projects. So we recently built a ramp for a veteran. His wife had a stroke and is now permanently paralyzed. And the only way they could get her home is if they put a ramp up. And they couldn't find a contractor to actually give them a decent price. So I said, you know what? Just let me do it. I was a carpenter. I got a couple friends that are carpenters. And so we went to Home Depot and we told them what we were doing. I was like, we're building a ramp for a veteran whose wife is paralyzed. And they gave us a 99% discount. So I paid $3.49 for the ramp. So we got out there and got it built in 2 days. So now he can take his wife home.
I love that.
But the thing is, all of these programs, it's a mask. It's all a mask, right? All these fun activities are great, right? So we're trying to get veterans together and build camaraderie. But the mask of it all is getting these guys doing something to get them in a vulnerable state, to actually get them to open up so I can talk to them. So we can talk about the traumas of their past, and we can figure out, what's next? What's holding you back? How can we do this? Well, we unpack everything. The whole theory of unpacking your shit, right? We unpack everything, but a lot of people stop there. Nobody teaches these guys how to pack it up, how to organize it, how to put it away correctly. So what I do is I help them walk them through how we can take all of this shit, unpack it, and actually look at it, see what we can toss out, and see what we need to address. What do we need to
I
talk about?
love this. I love
Yeah.
this. Okay, what is an example of what you do there, brother? How are
It's
you doing
so
this?
usually, so like let's say we'll use Operation Wolf Dog. That one, the best way to get somebody vulnerable is put them in front of a wild animal. Works great. So
Yes.
these guys get super timid. Most veterans get really nervous when they first step in the cage because he's a big ass wolf. And they're literally face to
Yeah.
face with an animal that can rip your face off. Super friendly though. He's a nice wolf. And so they get in there and they actually get to the point where they're petting this animal. And there's just an amazing connection there. So you get a lot of people who talk about horses, right? So horses put off a certain frequency that's actually healing. I don't remember the hertz level. That was Wayne with Valor Horses gave me all the info on that. So what we do is we use wolves, right? So these guys actually get connected and become part of the pack, right? So what we want when we get out of the military is to be a part of something. So they get to come out, they get to play with a wolf. And when you get a wolf to come up and let you pet him, you are being accepted into the pack. So that's how we kind of push it, is you are now a part of the pack. And after that experience, usually we start working on something. We build expand fences, or we build a house or something like that. And what I usually do is I share something about myself. Um, a lot of people know the reason why I started. I had a failed suicide attempt in 2015, and I usually use that or some traumas that I experienced while I was in the military. What that does is any negotiator, right? So I took some negotiation tactics with the FBI and everything back when I was in the military. So one of the first things you need to do is you need to get a rapport. You need to find out, how are you guys relatable? And so, we're veterans, that helps. But when you share, something that you've been through, like a horrible trauma that you've been through, they tend to open up. Every time I've had veterans share some horrible shit that they've been through after I kind of open the door for vulnerability, right? So we use the animals to get them in that state. I share a story, and then
Mm.
eventually they start talking. So once they share the
That's
stories, that's just kind of when I do my magic.
yeah, that is an interesting way of using animals to do it. I don't know that I would have thought that would facilitate, but I mean, it makes
Mhm.
sense, but I never would have thought of that. Okay, so Skip, since we're on this topic, how about we just briefly talk about, because why I want to bring up your bridge story, because that with the person that you were helping on a call, is that allowed you to open up. Um, I don't know necessarily. It can finding else somebody else that you love and trust. But I guess will you tell that very heartwarming story and share, because it's one way, and I do think it's very beautiful in uh, my perception or observation that you shared with a stranger,
Mhm.
and you were willing to do that, and that takes a certain level of courage too.
Yeah, so vulnerability is courage. That's one of the big things I tell people all the time, is because, when you're being vulnerable and you actually talk about something either you did or something that happened to you in the past, like, um, a lot of females actually struggle with sexual military trauma. There's so many females out there who have never spoke up about it. I did a podcast with Donna Michaels, and she actually wrote a book called Courageously Broken. She writes about her story about how she was sexually assaulted in the military. But her version of coming out and writing this book has just been tremendous for her, because plenty of people have been reaching out to her, and now she's a mentor. She's actually also a cop too. I don't know where. She wouldn't tell me. I don't think she's allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
so when you open up and you share these things, it actually it it frees some of the weight off your shoulders, right? So it's like a ship going down sea, right? The more and more stuff you throw down in the hull, you're eventually going to sink. So what you need to do is you need to open up these boxes, figure out what's inside of them, and see what you can toss overboard. And just talking about these things is how you do it.
Do you think, though, as far as like your biggest thing in not wanting to tell it to other people, is that of being embarrassed?
I think that has a lot to do with it. There's a lot of people who either don't want to feel like a pussy, or they don't want to be embarrassed, or they just don't want people to know because they think that, fuck it, other people have it worse than me. No, 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 no. It's not the way it works. Everybody has their
Hmm.
own story. Everybody has their own situation. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter what I've been through when we're talking about you, because you had a life experience that caused trauma. That is a serious thing. It doesn't matter what it is. You could have
Hmm.
been attacked by a dog or gotten a car accident. The number one leading cause of PTSD is car accidents. A lot of people don't realize that.
Number one cause of
the
car
number one
accidents?
cause of the number one cause of PTSD is car accidents.
Huh. I don't think I knew that. No.
Yep.
Okay, so you basically you got this call from somebody who was getting ready to jump off a bridge, right? How many years ago with this?
I actually listened to the recording the other day because it kind of just popped up in my head. It was February 2017. I got a phone call. I'm a 911 dispatcher for the Minnesota State Patrol currently. And I got a phone call from a female, and she said, I'm gonna jump. I don't want to do this anymore. And so we have GPS. So I pulled her up on the GPS on my map and found she was standing right next to a camera. Pulled the camera up, look over, and sure enough, she's standing over a bridge, getting ready to jump. So we start talking, and a few minutes into it, we come to find out she's a veteran. And I'm like, perfect. This is my rapport. This is what I need. This is my connection. And so I was like, yeah, I'm a veteran too. I was like, where did you serve? And we start talking about the military, and it kind of slowly started to decompress everything. And then she started telling me how she was raped in the military and she never told anybody. And we got a little bit more in depth in it, and her husband left her. She was living in her car, which was parked on the bridge. So she was just a veteran who was really struggling. And she was like, I have no reason to live. And so finally, backtrack to 2015 real quick. I'm not going to get too deep into it. I put a gun to my head and I pulled the trigger. Life was just too much for me, and I wanted to end it all. I was just tired of it. There's a lot of things going on in my life, and it got to the point where I had enough. And lucky for me, when I pulled the trigger, the primer was a dud. It was fully impacted, fully dented, and it should have went off. It's a fluke that I'm still alive. So I use my second chance to do anything I can to try to help others. And so at this time, 2017, I'd never told anybody. Not one person on this earth knew that I tried to kill myself. Nobody. And I'd never talked about it. I said I was going to bury it. And I was going to say that this will never come out again. And I will never do it again, never attempt again. So when she finally took a step forward a little bit, it looked like she was going to jump at the time. I was like, can I tell you something? And I told her, I was like, back in 2015, I found out that my daughter was autistic. I had a friend of mine kill himself, and found out my wife was cheating on me. She had a boyfriend for the last 6 months. Me and my kid's mom get along great now. So just preface that real quick. So this isn't me hating on her. It's just a fact. So I was telling her that my life was just going to shit, and I actually put a gun to my head and I pulled the trigger. And I told her, I was like, to this day, I've been trying to figure out why am I still here? What's the reason for me still being alive? And I was like, maybe it's to answer this phone call. Maybe it's because I'm the one that was supposed to talk to you today. And I told her, I was like, listen, I don't care if you feel alone. I was like, you're not alone. I was like, I'm your brother. We served in the military together. I was like, I don't want you to die. I want you to move on to go see another day, because there's plenty of help out there. And I just started listing off all these places that she can get help. And I was like, just please, just get down and talk to my troopers. I was like, they're not going to arrest you. We're just going to get you help. I was like, that's what you need right now, and that's what we're going to give you. And she actually got down and listened to the recording again. And I could hear her hugging my troopers, and I watched it on camera, but I ripped my headset off and I fucking stormed out of that room. I had never cried at dispatch. I had been there at the time. Let's see, I started there in 2013. So I'd been there for 4 years, never got emotional. That's the first time I just broke down crying, and I walked away and went in the other room and I just let it out. And I'm like, man, that felt great. And then the crazy thing is I go back in and sit down and put my headset on. I click
back to work.
State Patrol 911. I hang up with that phone call. I look over at my partner, and she was still staring at me, just jaw dropped. And I'm like, can I help you? She's like, you tried to kill yourself? I'm like, yeah, about that. And so I told her, I was like, I've never told anybody. I was like, that right there is the first time I've ever told somebody. And it was so freeing, and it felt so good to watch her get down, and knowing that because of my experience, because of my words, because of the things that I've been through, that's fuel. You know, that's fuel for my future. And so I decided right about then and there that I want to help veterans. I was working really hard on myself at the moment. 2016, I got into Buddhism, and I started practicing and following it and living the life. And I started studying PTSD. I started studying suicide. I started studying all of the things that veterans are going through right now to help me, right? And I'm a firm believer, as in Buddhism, is if you want to change the world, you got to be the change that you want to see. You know, that was Gandhi said that, of course. So I started changing myself, and then eventually, once that phone call happened, I'm like, I need to help veterans. That's what I want to do. I need to help my brothers and sisters. I'm fucking tired of seeing these guys kill themselves. 146,000 veterans have killed themselves in the last 20 years.
That's what I'm saying. Just keeps going on, and just, I don't know. Going back. Okay. So yes, to address that. Thank you. I'm very glad you're still here, that you are doing what you are doing. I'm
glad I suck at suicide.
I know, right? That's why I was almost going to make a joke about it. It's like feeling embarrassed that you couldn't even do that. Okay.
Yeah, that realization that day was rough. I'm just like, God, I can't even fucking kill myself. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, we have to just laugh at these things. But going back, how did you find out even about exploring with Buddhism? How did that come into your life?
So I broke my neck early 2016.
Oh yes, there's that.
Yeah. So I've been through some shit. I broke my neck, and I had stumbled across epigenetics, and so it was a little bit before that. I don't remember how I came across it, to be honest. I really couldn't tell you, but I watched a video on it and I started looking into it. And when you think of epigenetics, right, it's all about your surrounding, and your environment controls everything. So you think about hypochondriacs, right? They're always, I think I'm sick, and then they're always sick, right? So if your brain can literally make you sick, why can't it heal you? And so I started looking into that and thinking about it. So I actually looked at a book about spinal injuries. And so I started like trying to figure out, how can I fix myself? And so I started going to a chiropractor and everything, and eventually had surgery. But I started studying Buddhism as well. So I kind of put epigenetics aside, and I dove into Buddhism. And a lot of it had to do with self-realization and self-healing. And everything we have and we need is right here, right inside of us. And so I said, why can't I figure out how to heal myself? So I did the surgery. They told me an 18-month recovery. I told them, fuck that. I was an MMA fighter at the time. I broke my neck in an MMA match. And I said, I'm going to come back and fight again this year. They're like, no, you're not. I was like, well, watch me. So I did my own PT, and I started focusing on meditation every single night. Every single night I'd spend at least 30 or so minutes on my neck. I would meditate and focus on my neck. Through the books that I had been reading about spinal injuries and healing, I started focusing on thinking about my neck actually getting to the point where it gets better. And so a lot of it has to do with belief, right? There's a book that Bruce Lipton wrote called Biology
of Belief.
Yeah. So I started thinking that way. It's like, I'm going to heal my neck. I will get better. This is all going to be better. It was hell the first week or two. Guy could barely get out of bed. 2 months later, I was 100% medically cleared to start fighting again. 100%.
Wow. 2 months.
Oh my God. I had more grip in my right arm than I had before. So before I had surgery, I couldn't curl a 5-pound dumbbell. That's how bad my injury was. So my C6 nerve was pinched off. I lost about 1.5 inches of mass on my right bicep, and I couldn't feel these 2 fingers on my right side. And my hand was just always in pain, and it was terrible. My grip was like, I think they said my grip was 5% of what it is in my left hand. That's how bad it was. And after I was fully healed, my right hand actually had 10% more grip than my left hand. So I like overdid it. 2 months after that, I took a fight and I won fight of the night. It's all about belief. It's all about insight.
Yes. It's getting people to that place. Yes.
Exactly. So the more and more I pushed on Buddhism, the more and more I started to believe it. And then I went back to epigenetics back in like 2018. I was going through my second divorce. I've been married and divorced twice.
Yeah.
Long story short, after
I
my
know.
suicide attempt in 2015, I went to Brazil with my coach because he was getting his black belt. Met a girl, we got along. She flew up here, we got married. She got her green card and then left. So
At least it provides a good story.
whatever, it's all good.
Fun story.
But that actually helped me a lot, that divorce, because it pushed me to my next level, which was I'm grateful for the outcome. It sucked. It was horrible. I was hurt, but I'm grateful for the outcome because I sat there at the point. It's like, you know what? I could be sad. I could be upset. I could go down that road of depression again, or I could figure out how to evolve. How am I going to take
Mm-hmm.
the next step? And so I started getting deeper into Buddhism again, but I started studying epigenetics again. And I started to put the theory together that I didn't write a paper on this, but I wrote in a Word document. I was like, there, epigenetics is essentially the science behind Buddhism. And I
I
made that.
haven't studied it. I don't know anything about it.
I'll send you a few links. So when you really get into it, epigenetics is quite literally the science behind Buddhism. And there's a guy named Dr. Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist. He essentially uses a lot of this stuff and started to realize that epigenetics is all about your environment, right? Buddhism goes straight to, your environment is right here. Everything's inside, everything's internal.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of veterans who I talk to about meditation. Now, I wouldn't say I'm a Buddhist because I swear too much and I like meat, but I love the
Me
theories.
too. Me too. Well, I like to say, well, any label, just we like the concepts and the
I
philosophies.
love the philosophy of it, yes. And
Yes,
it
yes,
it essentially is a way of life.
yes. Right.
So I've kind of lived my life that way, and a lot of it has to do with that. Now I have a hard time with it because I'm a huge smart ass too. So it's like I got to find that balance,
Well, I think again that's just not giving ourselves a label because we are who we are, and that doesn't mean
Exactly.
because we swear and because I take self-defense and want to defend myself and like you know what I mean? If I
Well,
had
Buddhist monks
to
are actually some of the
step.
most badass fighters out there. Have you seen some
Yeah.
of the videos of Buddhist monks that
Well,
actually
yeah,
compete?
yeah. No,
It's
but I'm
amazing.
just saying it's not a peaceful like when you think about it, it sounds like an oxymoron. Like how are you like a Buddhist but yet you're like like using such aggression, but it's only, as needed.
It's the warrior in a
Um
garden concept.
okay, so before we let's talk a little bit more before we close about I do want to ask this and I have wanted to ask this to a lot of people that going back to the attempt on your life
Mhm.
afterwards does it seem like at the 2 week mark like people or let's just say about that like people stop asking you how you are and then it just starts to fade out after a while and does that bother you?
What do you mean? Like when they stop
Like, Nick,
when they
like
first
how
found
you
out that I
doing? Yeah,
when
well,
they
they're like, how you doing this week or today or, you know, whatever. Maybe some people hopefully were offering to, I don't know, do you want me to walk your dog for you or just things when you're in that moment of, well, you were already past it because people didn't actually.
Yeah, nobody
Yours
knew.
was years later.
It was it was 2
Well,
years after the attempt when people finally started to know, and then I didn't really talk about it too much still. So it was only that veteran who I talked to and then my partner. I was like, "Just keep it quiet." So nobody actually
so
found out that I attempted suicide until I released my article, 6 Principles to Improve Your State of Mind, because I actually wrote about it
mm.
in that article.
I
So,
want I want that. So well then what would be maybe then have you heard a veteran or somebody else that you know have that has basically because one of my other guests, I mean, I know with that like his was I don't know how soon after because he was hospitalized afterwards, right? Because they
mhm.
whatever admitted him. But the basically though the care afterwards whether people it they knew you did that, like checking in on you, like how you doing or whatever, or stories you've heard from other people. Like, does
I
it seem
think
like people
my
don't care after a while?
I think my situation is different, just because, like I said, when I released that article, it was 2019, so it had already been 4 years after my suicide attempt that people finally knew. So when I released that article, within that first day, I sent it to a bunch of people. I'm like, "Hey, I need you to read this," and that was my way of telling them, like, "Here's an article for everybody to read. Now, this is what I experienced. This is what I went through." And this is how I evolved. So my 6 principles that I wrote, I included those at the at the end of the article. So I wrote about my life. I wrote about the snowmobile accident with my birth mom. I wrote about how we don't talk anymore. I wrote about the abuse from my stepdad. I wrote about the army guy who killed himself in Iraq. I held his hand as he died. And then I wrote about my suicide attempt. And I told him, I was like, there's things that you can do with your life to actually improve it after you go through these types of traumas. And I said, it's all about mindset. So a lot of these 6 principles have a lot to do with the thoughts of Buddhism. So I won't go in depth with them, but the 6 principles are: who do you have around you? You have shooting stars and you have your black clouds. You need to get rid of your black clouds. You need to hold on to those shooting stars. What do you have?
I like that.
Yeah, I like that. What do you have? It's not only monetarily, but what do you have here? And what abilities and skills do you have? What value do you provide to the world? You got to stop and think about that. And if you think you don't have any value, it's time to fucking figure out what you're going to do, which leads to the next step. Is there anything you can do about your situation right now at this moment, right? So you can go through and you can list everything of all the shit that you need to get done, right? So you're broke or you're homeless or this and that. You have to think about all the little things too. Is there anything I can do right now? So right now at this moment, me and you are talking. Is there anything you can do about essentially anything right now other than talking to me right now? Not really. So if you have a car payment due or you got in an argument with somebody right now at this moment, that stuff doesn't matter. What matters right now is this conversation happening between us right now. The next step is you have to learn to accept your past. A lot of veterans get out of the military and what they're doing is they're walking backwards. So what happens when you walk backwards? You're not looking where you're going. You're going to trip and fall, right? So what you need to do is you need to stop. There's nothing wrong with stopping. You need to stop mentally and you need to think about it. You need to unpack all of that shit before you can go anywhere else. You need to look at it. You need to understand what stuff you need to keep, what stuff you can get rid of, and what stuff we need to put away that we're going to take out every once in a while. A lot of these traumas, we need to revisit them often. A lot of people don't want to. A lot of people try to hide it and bury it, right? But all you're going to do essentially is think of it as a garden. You're tainting the soil and nothing's going to grow. And so if you don't actually go back and look at these things and try to process them and understand why they happened, understand that the fact that they actually happened and there's nothing you can do about it now because it's in the past. Once you learn to accept your past, you can finally, the next principle is look forward to a positive future. Manifestation, that's where that comes from. If you don't know what manifestation is, good God, go watch a video or two. So you need to manifest. Actually stop and think, who do I want to be 5 years from now? That's the most important thing in the world. 2015, I was depressed. I was sad. I tried to kill myself. I said, fuck it. I don't want to be here anymore. I told myself when I got back I was kayaking, right? So when I got back from that kayak trip, I got in my car and I sat down after I was loaded up. I was like, you know what? I'm going to create a person in my head and I'm going to be that person. I decided to create the person who could have saved me. I want to be the person who could have talked myself out of trying to kill myself. 5 years later, I run a nationwide nonprofit that does exactly that. So if you manifest what you want your future to be, you lay out a path and you actually follow that path and you stay true to yourself, you stay honest, and you actually bust your ass to try to get to that point. You do the readings, you do the education, you do the actual work, and you can be that person. 5 years it took me to finally be the person that I wanted to be. And I ask people often, who's your hero? A lot of people say a football star or some shit like that. And I always ask them, why isn't it you? Why aren't you your hero? It doesn't have to be right now. You know, a lot of guys say, well, I don't think I've done anything to be considered a hero. I was like, okay, stop right now. Think about who you want to be in the next 5 years. Who is your hero going to be in 5 years, right? You need to be the hero of your own story. So if you create and you manifest who that person's going to be, you can be that person as long as you work for it, you write down the list, and you stay true to yourself. And the 6th principle is the reason why it's the 6th principle. The last one is the most important, but it's the most forgotten, is you need to learn to love yourself again. You need to understand that self-care is the most important thing that anybody can do. You need to come before everybody else. If you have children, you need to come first. Because if you can't take care of if you can't take care of yourself, how are you going to take care of anybody else? And that doesn't mean, that doesn't mean saying, fuck you guys can live outside. That's not what I mean. What I mean is actually taking the time to take your self-care, right? Go to a spa, relax. I recently had a veteran who was going through some stuff, and I purchased her a $150 gift card. I was like, go to a fucking spa, get a massage, relax, just take your time, and actually take the time to focus on you, because you have a child. If you're not taking the time and focusing on yourself, how are you going to take care of that child? Because you're stressed, you're irritated, you're irritable, and you're not going to give that kid the care you can give them if you don't take care of yourself. So you need to love yourself. So
What do
these are
you
the, go ahead.
I love those. Can you send that?
Thank you.
Can you send that to me?
Yeah, I'll send you the article.
And then I can post them. Well, you know, a huge part of it, just because you're more evolved, okay, than a lot of people, it's still the whole selfish thing. I think people really
Mhm.
think it's being selfish
Exactly.
to self care.
Self-care is not selfish.
And what was I going to ask? In that, I was going to ask you something within the mix of all of that. I think it was going back to what was the last? What was number 5 and number? What was number 5?
Number 5 is look forward to a positive future. Manifest your future.
Oh, no. It was about, what do you feel like is the best advice? Because I feel like a lot of people, they look at, oh, everything that you just said sounds beautiful and whatever, and they don't have the belief yet, right? Like that they can choose their own life, or that other person is possible that they are designing. Yeah. How do you think you could help them feel more confident about achieving? Maybe create some sort of minor goal for themselves?
I would say most of these people who
a challenge, maybe a physical challenge, like
maybe. I mean, I would say most of the issues that those people would have, if I were to sit down and talk to them, likely they have doubts and they have things about their past that they have not actually gone over yet. So I would say they need to stop and reevaluate and figure out, are they living the life that they want to live? So if you want to be a millionaire, right, you have to be able to do it, right? So you have to actually have the skills. You have to have the abilities. If you don't have the skills and abilities, you need to go get those skills and abilities. This life is an amazing thing. This country is an amazing place. I will tell anybody, it doesn't matter who you are. If you come to this country with the dedication, with the work ethic and the heart, you can do anything you want to do. Unless it's like, I want to be a unicorn, then I can't really help you there. Just buy yourself a furry costume and you'll be okay, I guess, maybe.
Well,
but there's no limitations.
What would be, and again, that sounds so fantastical. Really, it does. Anybody saying, oh, anything in life is possible. So what do you think is like a baby step? I have my own solutions. What is a baby step? Like, maybe we need to give a really good example. Like they want to change, they want to change this area of their life, right? And fear is probably the number one thing holding them back, right? Something is blocking them, their sense of achievement about themselves. I don't know. I'm going to still reference self-defense, any form of that, because there's so much of that whole feeling like I can't do it. I feel like, and changing your words is actually number one that I recommend.
Yeah,
that I can, and I will, right?
I
can and I will.
Post on,
to everything.
I shared a post on Facebook on Warriors Next Adventure. I said, you know what? I get to wake up this morning. I get to run this nonprofit. I get to go to work. You changing it from, mindset is everything. I absolutely promise you, mindset is everything. If you're negative, you're going to have a negative outcome. If you're positive and you work for it, right? You can't just be positive and like, I want millions of dollars. It's just not just going to fall out of the fucking sky. You got to work for it, right? But if you work for something with a positive attitude, the likelihood of it actually happening is it's tenfold. If you go into something and you say, I don't think this is going to work, it's not going to work, and you half-ass it, of course it's not going to fucking work because you manifested that it's not going to work. If you actually take the time and you stop and think, look, this is going to be successful. One day or another, I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail a lot. If you want to own a business or you want to run something or you want to be successful in life, fail and fail often. Because if you're not failing, you're not fucking trying hard enough. You need to actually work for it. I failed so many times with this nonprofit, so many times with just little things here and there that most people don't know about. It's all little things here personally that I'm like, that didn't work. I need to reevaluate this. I failed so many times with this nonprofit, but I consider it successful because the amount of veterans who have reached out to me and have told me either, this nonprofit saved my life or you saved my life or you changed the way I think. I always stop them and say, no, you did. You were the one who contacted me. You were the one who put in the work. You were the one who actually listened to what I said and you applied it to yourself. And you are the one who actually made the choice to choose. You changed your life. I was just a facilitator. And so now when I actually understand that I'm just facilitating change, that's it. I'm not the one doing it. I'm the one helping them understand and realize that they have the power, because everything's right here. Everything. If you want it to happen, you have to manifest it and you have to work for it.
Okay, so lovely. It's so beautiful. Okay, so we are going to recommend, and these are on Audible as well. So Biology of Belief, which actually still
Yes.
haven't read and just heard of. Power of the Subconscious Mind. I have a
The,
whole list of
the
things.
5 Love Languages
The 5
is
Love
probably the most
Languages.
important book anybody can read.
Ask and It Is Given. I don't know if you've heard that one.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's go ahead and close and give them your contact information and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so you can contact us on any social media as Warriors Next Venture. We're on YouTube. That's where our podcast is. We have a couple other videos on there. We have Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're on Spotify for some of our podcasts. I kind of stopped putting podcast on there. I might go back and revamp. Like I said to you, I lost like 40 hours worth of podcast stuff. So if I can download the audio, I'll put it back on there. You can find us on PayPal Giving Fund. There's a GoFundMe out right now for the PTSD versus Jiu Jitsu documentary we're doing in April. Traveling the country 18,000 miles, training at 37 different Jiu Jitsu gyms, interviewing a shitload of veterans. So it's going to be amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Dates for that will be out shortly. And yeah, so you can always contact us 612-518-9282. That is the nonprofit number, but it's also my personal number. If you know anybody struggling with their mental health or just needs a kick in the ass in life, have them give me a call.
And when's the next retreat and where?
So
Or
as
climb?
of now, we don't really have a whole lot planned because we're focusing on getting this tour done, because this documentary is going to be amazing, but it takes a lot. So everything else is kind of on hold. The Wolf Dogs, Operation Wolf Dog, is usually on hold the end of November through like March, because the females get extremely aggressive. And so we can't go in the cages with them. It's like mating season. So we kind of just stay away from there at those times. The racing obviously is on hold because it's winter. We actually might be going on the lakes soon and doing some drifting when the lakes freeze over. So that'll be later on in the spring. But yeah, pretty much everything's on hold right now. We have next year planned April through June. We're going to be stopping through the whole United States. So we're going to be traveling pretty much in the outer rim. So everything along the coast, technically. We will be going up into Oklahoma and then back down, hooking up over down to Florida, up to Massachusetts, down to Philly, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Michigan, back over to Wisconsin. And then we have July, tentatively, is going to be our Mount Whitney climb. So that's the highest mountain peak in the lower 48 states over in California. And then we are also thinking about going back to Colorado back in August. We have a couple of canoe events planned, but we don't have dates yet. So as of now, everything is tentative.
Okay. Well, they can always just refer to the website or whatever to find out updates.
Yep. Website or Facebook is going to see most of the stuff, and Instagram.
Okay. Thank you, Nick, for today. And thank you all, my audience, for listening and checking out Rock Your Life with Nora Finch today. And my website is rockyourlifewithnorafinch.com. And hopefully you will check it out and check out another episode. Thank you. Bye.